Yay.
So, welcome everyone to 2019 International Podcast Day. I'm your host, Steve Lee, and I'd like to welcome you to another year of celebration of one of the things that are just so dear to our hearts, and that's podcasting. And as we continue our journeys and the population is continuing to get involved with this art and craft that we love so much, why don't we all say Yahoo to podcasting? So when I say international, I want everybody out there to say podcast day. You ready?
Yeah.
International.
Podcast Day.
One more time. International.
Podcast Day.
Oh, this is better than the NFL. Let me tell you, if you're watching the NFL right now, turn it off, come on over and get involved with us.
Oh my gosh.
As I mentioned, my name is Steve Lee and I'm one of the founders of International Podcast Day. And I'm also here with Dave Lee, my partner in crime, and also one of the founders of International Podcast Day. Dave, welcome to the kickoff of 2019.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Welcome in. I am Dave Lee, co-founder of International Podcast Day. As always, good to be behind the mic, setting up a amazing 32-hour plus live schedule here, spanning 22 different countries this year. It's going to be pretty incredible. Welcome to International Podcast Day 2019. It's great to be back again this year.
Fabulous.
I'd like to also introduce, not on the live stream right now, but one of the most important people with International Podcast Day, and that is Daniel J. Lewis. Daniel is always in the background working feverishly to work any kinds of problems and issues, not just during the event, but the entire year. And we love him and we appreciate him so much. Now, to some really cool stuff. Elsie Escobar is with us from Libsyn, and you're going to find out a lot more about Elsie. And Elsie is a diehard podcast junkie. Let me tell you, she lives and breathes and works in the medium. It's like her life. She's employed by Libsyn, and she also runs the largest podcasting community for women called She Podcasts. Elsie is also, and we're so proud of her, a 2017 inductee into the Podcast Hall of Fame. Elsie, congratulations, and thank you for spending time with us on this very special day.
Oh, you bet. I'm so stoked to be here. I'm delighted. This is like my first time, so this is very exciting.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I can sure feel it from here, even though we're across the pond from each other. But, International Podcast Day is pretty unique, and it's our day. It's your day. It's all of our days within podcasting. But there's other things that have happened on September 30th that I think you might find important, but we still have our own day. In 1920, on September 30th, Babe Ruth hit his 60th home run of the season.
Oh.
He did it on International Podcast Day. Did you know that?
No way.
In 1949, September 30th, the Berlin airlift ended. Jeez. Tragically, in 1955, James Dean died in an auto accident, all on September 30th. But here we are celebrating our podcasting. So what is International Podcast Day all about? Well, actually, Podcast Day is a celebration for podcasters, listeners, and the industry. And for those who've never heard of podcasting, it's one of the important factors that we want to try to achieve. However, International Podcast Day is about you, not us and what we're doing. It's about the celebration. Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you real quick for some information about International Podcast Day.
Yeah, again, I want to reiterate what Steve had just said. International Podcast Day, what we do on our side at our live page, streaming 22 different countries over 32 hours. We'd love for you to take part in, to celebrate everything that's going on at the international level. But it truly is about you as a podcaster or as a podcast listener or audio enthusiast in general, about doing what you want to do to celebrate the day. That could be scheduling meetups. That could be thanking your podcasters. It could be doing giveaways on your own show. There's a lot of different things that you could be doing. But what I wanted to do quickly here is just go through a little bit and give you a little bit of the brief history behind International Podcast Day. A lot of people don't really know the story behind it. And so here is truly an international celebration of the power of podcasting. And where did it all begin? So in 2014, Steve was listening to the radio, driving through town, and he heard a commercial for Senior Citizens Day, and something popped into his head and said,
Oh.
why doesn't podcasters and podcasting industry have their own day? Everyone else has their own day. Let's figure this out. So sure enough, he gave me a phone call. He's like, I got this random idea, Dave. What if we do a national podcast day? I'm like, that is a fantastic idea, Steve. So what we did is we put our founding team of myself and Steve, Ray Ortega, Daniel J. Lewis, Dave Jackson, and Nick Suberling. And we just said, we want to just do a small little celebration. Let's figure out 6 hours of live broadcasting, and it spanned over a full day. So we did a couple hours in the morning, took a 4-hour break, did a couple hours in the afternoon, took another break, and wrapped up the day with two live hours as well. So, and that was only US only. And so it was a major success. And then instantly, right after that, we heard from the international community that was like, hey, listen up, we are everywhere. And really it spawned from the UK and the England area. And they said, we're growing over here. And the day after National Podcast Day ended, we immediately rebranded and called ourselves International Podcast Day. And that was the first time an international event was planned, bringing together podcasters from 15 countries in one continuous live stream. And that was a phenomenal event and such great memories there. And it was the first of its kind. And so as it's grown over the last 4 years, this being the 6th total year that this podcast day event has happened, we have seen incredible international social meetups and events going on. As you can see on the screen here, these are just a few examples of the meetups, social events, and conferences that have been scheduled around the year. There has been anywhere from Brazil to the UK to Poland to India, Wellington in New Zealand. There has also been meetups in Peru, a lot here in the United States as well. But that kind of gives you a really brief idea of the variety of social events that people are scheduling and doing to celebrate International Podcast Day. And of course, we have even more. We have a meetup this year in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We have another one going in Bangalore, India, which just happened yesterday, as a matter of fact. We've had Jamaican meetups. There's been here in the United States from North Carolina to Pittsburgh and everything in between. And you can see there's been different banners, and a lot of different companies and organizations have got behind International Podcast Day. And just to reiterate the point, is that we've seen merchandise everywhere from Finland to the United Kingdom to Canada through the United States as well. And so what started as a simple 6-hour celebration here in the States has really evolved, one, because the podcasting community and the podcast enthusiasts have got behind the idea and the concept of International Podcast Day, and it has just grown from there. So that's a little brief history into what's formed as International Podcast Day as we know today, and it continues to grow. There is so much more that goes on throughout a 3-day period during International Podcast Day that we don't even know about. We just try and find and share as many cool stories along the way as we can. So, Steve and Elsie, that is a little bit of background into International Podcast Day, and we are just super excited again to bring it to you. And again, it's an international celebration of the Power Podcast. Whatever means or ways you find to celebrate, you do that.
Mm-hmm. I love all of that. That's so neat. I hadn't really ever heard the story, so I'm glad that it came from Grandparents' Day. What was it, or what was it?
I think it
Senior
was
Citizens Day.
Yeah,
And it struck me because, well, I'm kind of in that ballpark now.
right.
And, it used to always kind of be flattering when I go get something and they would say, "Are you a senior citizen? We'll give you a discount." From now, it's like I just get it automatically, which has me kind of worried. It's like, oh, I've changed that much. But irregardless, I must say the number one question that we're probably asked is, hey, International Podcast Day is on the 30th. Why are you starting on the 29th? With your celebration, your stream, and everything that's going on.
Oh, that's right. Right.
Well, there's a secret. I think Heather's in the chat room and she will testify that if I'm not wrong, it is now September 30th in New Zealand. So that's why we start the 29th here in the United States, because the celebration and the day of celebratory information and displays have already started across the world. I must say that I'm really tickled with this year's sponsors. And sponsors are very important, and it's not necessarily from a financial position. It's from many different outreaches and information that they provide us, and it's a way of bringing more community together through these sponsorship relationships. So I'd really like to thank Blueberry, who is our platinum sponsor this year. Libsyn, love having Libsyn on this year as our gold sponsor. Hanny will be up next hour as our gold sponsor with repurpose.io. And then we have celebration supporters, and they're very important to us. And that is Second Line Themes, Geeks Rising, Synth, Outlier HQ, and Focusrite. And this year, thank goodness for our streaming partner, StreamYard, who is allowing us to make this entire online event possible.
That's so fun.
It is, isn't it? So just real quick, and then we're going to get into some real meat and potatoes of what's going to go on for the next almost 3 days. So I hope Dave is caught up on his naps, because I'm going to nap and you're going to be up till 2, 3 in the morning, not me. But over the next 30 hours, you're going to see amazing podcasters from all over the world, some of them in their native language, because it's very interesting. Things that we believe are an issue or a problem or a plus in whatever country we live in is not necessarily the same in other countries. And it's interesting to listen to those differentials, and we can all learn from each other. But what each of us do is important as individuals for Podcast Day. If you go over to our website, internationalpodcastday.com, there's lots of promotional material, images, video, audio, thank you cards that you can send to your favorite podcaster and just say thank you. Use the hashtag International Podcast Day. And I'll tell you why, because this is our 6th year now. For the last 5 years, we have trended number 1 in social media during the time of our event. And we want to keep that going. A real easy way to find out what's going on by following the hashtag is use tchat.io. And we thank Daniel J. Lewis for always bringing that to our attention. So now we're going to get into some real cool stuff, because it's important that as we all continue to develop our podcast, our skills, we also need to have methods of outreach, bringing community together. And that's something that Elsie has done. And I'll tell you, I know that, and I'm going to speak for everybody, we are all so proud of you and what you and Jessica have done.
So sweet.
It's
Aw.
amazing what you have done. So what I'd like to do is maybe take a little journey, Elsie, if we may, from
Sure.
perhaps when you started with your yoga podcast into where we're at today. And then I really want you to tout your event coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I started podcasting because of the community. I really loved. I think the biggest thing that drew me to it after listening, right? After listening to podcasts and after really getting into this thing, I was like, I want to find out all kinds of things about this podcasting. It seems like these are like everyday people recording in their homes, it seems like, because I started to listen very early on to Rob Walsh's podcast 411. And at that time, it was like one of those very I think it was possibly the like interview podcast out there at that time. I don't know, especially with podcasters. So I started to get to know all kinds of things, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to find some local people who know what this is about. And I ended up kind of stumbling upon the LA podcasters, because that's where I used to live. And they were incredibly amazing. Just I started to attend their meetups. It was I met some great people there, and at that time I had also I started my podcast, Elsie's Yoga Class. I started podcasting that because I wanted to know how to podcast before I started my actual show, whatever that is, right? Because I had a vision that it was going to have, segments and music and all kinds of things. And of course, I didn't know how any of that stuff worked. So I decided to just start recording my yoga classes. That was the easiest thing, sort of as a test. And it ended up kind of taking off because there weren't very many people who actually thought, let's have an audio yoga class. How about that? And so um, I started to get a lot of attention because of that. And the LA podcasters were really amazing, very supportive, very open. And interestingly enough, the way that feeling of excitement about podcasting really continued was because there was the Portable and New Media Expo that happened in Ontario way back when, right? And so I took a train, and this is Ontario, California, not Ontario, Canada, Ontario, California. And so I took a train from where I was living at that time. It was like one of those, it was like a Metrolink. It was a Metrolink. And I went all the way up over to Ontario and hung out during the day. Like I didn't have a ticket to the event. I just went and hung out and walked the show floor. I don't know if I was supposed to have been there or not, but I walked around and I started to watch like people were recording and people had booths. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And people, the LA podcasters had a booth. And so they asked me to come and be part of a panel that was recording at that time that was called Women in Podcasting. And I was like, I just started my podcast like 2 months before. You know what I mean? I was like, what do you want me on a panel for? I just figured this stuff out. But it just because of the fact that I was one of the only women that attended the conference, I guess there wasn't very many of us at that time. I didn't really ever think about that stuff. And so that's how I started. And in that process, because of that same fact that we're talking about now, that there weren't that many women, later on, my partner, Jessica Kupferman, and I kind of recognized that there was a lack of, I guess, places where women podcasters could get together and talk about podcasting. And so she started a group called Women in Podcasting after attending another conference, which was the New Media Expo. After going to that conference and experiencing more women in the event and what that felt like for us to be together, she came back and she was like, I kind of want to keep some of that energy, and that there was something amazing that happened meeting us women there. And in doing so, she created that group. And I was so excited. I started to invite all of the women that I knew that were in podcasting, which she didn't know because she was coming from a different, like a different place in the internet. And in bringing all that together in the conversation in the group, a lot of the women started to say, why isn't there a podcast just aimed at women podcasters? And so in with us, like kind of observing that, I kind of was like, would you be up for doing a show about podcasting from the women's point of view? And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And I already had a name because I had been wanting to start a show just focusing on women podcasters. And I just didn't know what that show was, but I had a name. So I had She Podcasts. And she literally, from idea to when we launched, it was 2 weeks because she's really fast at doing stuff. So it was like, we decided we're going to record. We recorded 4 episodes to start. She had the website and the branding done like in a heartbeat, and she just put it out there. And I was like, whoa, I guess here we go. And that was in 2014. So it was like, right, we were just talking about it in tomorrow's episode of She Podcast. If I get the show notes done and published, we are talking about you guys because we looked at, there's all of these amazing things that were born in 2014. Like International Podcast Day was born. So was Relay FM, which is another network that I really look up to. And I think that they've done such a fantastic job. They were born on 2014. She Podcast 2014 as well. And so you guys started in September. She Podcast was launched in January. I'm sorry, June, June, late June 2014. So that's kind of how we started. And so it kind of like slowly started to grow and grow and grow and grow. And then early this year, Jessica Kupferman launched a Kickstarter campaign to see if there was any interest to have a conference that was all very female centric, very woman centered event about podcasting with just that kind of a vibe, that kind of a feel. And so she just wanted to get a sense of it. We had this was really her baby. This is what she put together. She launched the campaign. I was kind of like following her lead because, in all honesty, I'm not a big fan of conferences myself. It's like not my cup of tea, but this is something she really wanted to do. And I want to support her in any way that I could possibly have done to get her doing this thing. And so she put the Kickstarter up. We had a $25,000 goal to hit. And we thought, okay, if we hit that goal, then we can start the process of being able to get women to go here. Because people ask us, I'm sure if you guys know, like, we should definitely do it. We should do that. And then people never follow through. But alas, we got 200% funded for that Kickstarter campaign. So we ended up with $50,000 for it. And we were like blown away. And as of now, we have 700 people coming to the conference in Atlanta at the middle of this month. And tickets are going to stop being sold October 1st. So the day after International Podcast Day is the last day you could get tickets. So we're closing the doors 100%. So if you've been on the fence, this is the last chance you're going to get to make history with the rest of us.
One of the originals, right?
One of the originals. I know, the OG SPL 19. Yeah.
Yeah. What an incredible story. And you're right. I think 2014 was a very pivotal moment in the podcasting space. One, it was the media was 10 years old at that point. We know that
Right.
September 2004 was when the original podcast was essentially created and sent out. And so that's why Steve and I chose International Podcast Day to fall in September. And you and Jess just following up with She Podcast and everything that you've done in the space. And you're right. I was real laughing behind the scenes here when you said when you offered the idea up to Jessica, and all of a sudden, like 24 hours later, it's like, okay, we got this, we're done. That's at the speed at which she works, and that's how her mind works. And it's like, okay, well, if you give her an idea and she loves it, she is going with it.
Yeah.
And but I think it's amazing to see. Steve and I happened to go out of town for a short day-long podcast festival in LA a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't surprised because I'm very familiar with what's going on in the podcasting space, but I'd probably say 60% of the crowd that was there were females. They were female podcasters that are looking to grow their shows, getting into it. And even our sponsors, the sponsors at the event, they were female-owned companies that were doing their thing. And so it is a very prominent aspect of podcasting that cannot be ignored. And what a great little atmosphere that you're going to create there in Atlanta, Georgia, come 11 days from now, 12 days from now.
Yes, almost
just
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to be absolutely incredible. And in a 200% Kickstarter campaign goal, that is incredible. It just goes to show, Elsie, that the industry is looking for it. They want to be a part of what's going on, and it's a powerful movement. And I just couldn't be more excited to at least be on the fringes of it and share in the delight of what's going on. So it's pretty incredible. It's an awesome story that you just shared.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of, and and it's very shocking. And of course, it's super scary and very anxiety inducing because, as you know, you guys get all this stuff together and then you have people that, essentially believe in you, right? The sponsors believe in you. They want to support you. You have people who want to be part of it. You've got people who just want to be there for you so that you succeed. And there's always this thing that, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Oh, what have I gotten myself into? And you just kind of have to follow through. And the only way to do it is to like take that step. We talked about it with Jess. I think on one of these past couple of shows have been therapy sessions for us because we are essentially peeling back the curtain on what it's like to really put something like this together, because neither of us have ever really done this before. So it's not like we're all prepared. Well, yes, there is preparation, of course, and then we're professionals, of course. So we have all of that, but there's also the idea of this. These are new steps that we're taking. We don't know where it's going to go. We can only follow through with what we know. We get information every single day about new things, and it's like you don't really know. And what I wanted to say is that you don't really know until you do it. And with podcasting, that's really one of the key missing pieces that I find, especially for newer people getting into the field or trying to start a podcast, that there's all of this incredible information about how to start a podcast, what microphone to use, where do you host your show, what the content's supposed to be, how do you, all the content planning and stuff. But in reality, the missing piece is that you got to do it, because you're not going to know all the things that you're missing until you do it. And you're not going to know how to troubleshoot the first time. You're going to forget to press record. You're going to forget. Like there's nothing else to say other than the fact that you are going to forget. The only way that you're going to remember from then on is when you forget, because then you go, that's never going to happen to me again, because now I know what that feels like. So all of these different things that we do as podcasters that now are sort of like the norm, if you will. Like how do we check our mics? Like how do we know our levels? Oh, I'm looking now visually to see that my levels aren't too high. Like there's all of these tiny little things that you learn, not because somebody told you, but because you've messed up. You've totally blown it. So you get better at it. And that skill set is such a unique skill set that we build together. And bringing it back to the women side of things, for us as women that historically have not necessarily been, I guess, educated maybe as much as men have in terms of technology, or it's not that we don't get it. It's just that it hasn't really been around as much. It's just like we have, like, this is the type of toy you give to a girl. This is the type of toy that you give to a boy. This are the devices that they play with. This is not what the girls on. And maybe there are some things that, you're just not really into technology. That's super fine. But part of, I think, our collective education as women in this, in the world now, is that we get an opportunity to really get our hands dirty when it comes to technology, how to input our ideas into the way that technology works, especially with social media. I think it's a very unique way in which women use it. Like even just thinking about the Facebook group that we have, now over 13,000 women in our Facebook group. And the energy in that space is by far much different than most of the Facebook groups about podcasting out there. And obviously you guys don't know that because you're not in it, but I can tell you that going into one and then going into She Podcast, it's like, oh, yay. That's what it feels like. Yay. It feels so nice. Everybody's
It's comfortable.
being
It's a
nice.
good place. It's homely. Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels great to be there. You're right.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it.
I certainly remember the Ontario days too.
Oh,
Some of the
yeah.
after parties I do want to forget,
Oh
but
my
I
gosh.
guess
Yeah.
that's a whole different topic in itself.
Yes, it is.
I'm surprised you remember them now.
Somebody told me I was there, but one of the things I find most intriguing, because you mentioned the group with 13,000 women, and women together are one of the most powerful forces in the world, I believe.
Oh.
Guys, I don't think guys can do it in the same manner, but I am going to wish I was a fly on the wall, at the bar at your conference to hear some of these chit chats you're all going to have.
Oh my
It's
God.
going to be amazing
Right.
conversations.
Yeah, I have a feeling, that's going to be, I could just imagine the level of sound that's going to just go up and up and up, because, oh my God, I remember we had our first meet. It wasn't even a meetup. It was an app podcast movement. Oh, podcast movement also started in 2014. How about that? See, all of these things. Anyway.
A lot of things,
A
exactly.
lot of things in 2014. Anyway, so we were in podcast, we were in that the first time, and people were asking us, like, are you guys going to have a meetup? We had just started the podcast. We had just started the group. And it was super spur of the moment. It was like, okay, let's meet at this bar. That was just right there. We packed that bar to such a degree that you couldn't even hear anybody in there. It was just like all of these women overran the whole thing. We had no idea what was going to happen, like at all. And that was the first time that we recognized the power of us coming together. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly powerful, and like you said, it's so many things coming together, which allowed you and Jess to create She Podcast, to create these meetups at different conferences, and for She Podcast Festival to be so popular right now. And it's incredible. I love to see it. It's something that we embrace here at International Podcast Day. For example, our schedule, we have over 50 podcasters, and it's right down the middle, 50-50 male and
Sweet.
female. It's like
That's awesome.
they are a strong, powerful voice in the industry, and we want them to be represented. And they're amazing, and that internationally. I mean, we're talking any podcasters from New Zealand, Australia, China, to the African nations, to Puerto Rico and Paraguay and Canada and everywhere in between. They such powerful voices, and we love to at least give them a platform here on our event. And it's just so great to hear a group of 13,000 women where I know exactly what you're talking about, Elsie, with some of these other groups where it's like, I could see why that is a very welcoming and desired place to be. So, because dynamics are different and there's so many opinions back and forth. But I know here and along your side, I mean, we celebrate having such strong, powerful female voices in the space, and we celebrate them and highlight them every year.
Yay, thank you. So kind of you guys.
I think there's something of a unique power when we talk about women in podcasting, and not just from what Elsie's been talking about, but let me give you another example. And, Dave and I have been doing our show since 2007, I believe. And hence afterwards, we rammed up a podcast network and had, a dozen shows and whatever. And my wife and Dave's wife and my daughter-in-laws started a podcast called Busy Ladies. It's no longer on the air anymore, but within a couple months, it was the most popular show on our network. Boom, just like that. And Dave and I are looking at each other going, should we wear wigs and just do a different show, man?
Yeah, we got outshined really fast.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. But it shows that power, and I think it's awesome. And where am I going with this? I'm going down a path of being together, working with each other, having strong communities, having strong beliefs about what we're doing to change lives in the podcasting space is worth every effort of sweat equity that we're putting into our shows.
For sure.
And we can give you example after example after example. And here in a little bit, we're going to show you one of the ultimate examples that we're proud of reporting this year. And, these have been wonderful conversations about what Elsie and Jess are doing. But there's also a bigger sign on the highway. And it's, we're here, lend us your ears, and we're going to do fabulous things to change this world. And I think that's what excites me the most about the path and the progress where I have seen podcasting go. It gives me that smile. It gives me a grin of happiness and enthusiasm to continue what I'm doing, because if it affects one person, I don't care how long I have to work. It's worth it. That's my point.
For sure. Yep. Yeah, it's really lovely to see the power that brings. And I think to your point here is that you guys have started you started this by yourselves, that, I mean, not by yourselves, but you had an idea and you brought people together and you have been able to take action on it and create this movement, which is really a collective of podcasters all around, right? That it's something that it makes us feel like we can. It makes us feel like we have access. It makes us feel that we have power, because when you start to think about the way that media has generally been set up, usually people who have radio shows, people who have TV shows, people who have insert whatever kind of show you feel that you have, there needed to be like a list of things that you needed to do, but in order for you to have that show and for you to have your voice heard. And one of the powerful things that I felt about that I really loved about podcasting and continue to love about it is that it is powered via voice, and it goes out via RSS feeds. That the RSS feed is still something that's open. It's still something that if if anything else, somebody can still subscribe to your show. Somebody can still subscribe to your show no matter where they are, obviously given the access and the infrastructure around them. But given that, there's nobody that's going to tell you that you can't put your show out there. And as right now, a lot of people might think like that's possibly maybe not what you want to do. There's too many shows out there. Oh my God. But I don't think that that's a problem. I think that, people listen to what they want to listen to, and everybody loves, like, gosh, there was so much joy that I got from so many different shows that I no longer listen to simply because I'm not that person anymore. We all change. We all grow up. We all mature. We all let go of things. And I used to be a huge bike rider. Biking was my thing. Like, I was on my bike all day, every day when I was in LA. I don't bike anymore, but I had a podcast that I used to listen to. It was like I think it must have started as a public radio show or something. And I used to listen to this, like, super, like, you could hear that the guys were holding their microphones just talking about bikes and talking about bike culture and all kinds of stuff. And it used to inspire me so much that I could hear those guys talking about bikes. Who else am I going to talk about bikes with? And it's lovely that you can still get shows exactly about the thing that you want to listen to.
Yep, it's the perfect avenue. It's the perfect media for that. And as you said, Elsie, things change, your lifestyle changes, what you've gone through, and there's always a podcast out there.
Mhm.
And it's always going to be available as long as content creators are out there. There's messages they want to share and experiences they've been through. If it connects with you, it's going to be awesome and it's going to be available. So, yeah, I just it's incredible media to be a part of right now. Absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
Elsie, I also wanted to ask you kind of on the side here, what it's really like working in the podcast industry, because you do work for Libsyn, and Libsyn is a podcast host, among other things. But some of us podcast, but we're not really involved in the industry. So, from your perspective, what can you kind of say about your visualization from inside the business?
I think that it's in the same way that you guys feel that it's growing so much. It is absolutely growing exponentially. I feel like it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of the industry itself. I have seen something that's just been a little striking for me that I didn't see before is the amount of like corporate money that's coming into the space. And so that's been a little like, wow, that's whoa, right? You just see that people are less not resistant. That's not the word. It just seems like there's less of a sale to be made. Like, more people are like, yeah, I would like to do that, or they're just going to step into it and recognize the value of what podcasting can bring into the space before having to sort of question it and go, what do you want us to do? Right. So there's less talking in that respect. I do see that there's an element of everybody gets an opportunity to speak with with each other. Like, I've coming from where I come from, and I think that this is, when I'm saying coming from where I come from in the podcasting industry, which it's very unique. I think that this is one part that I offer that is a very unique perspective. And also, I've been really pleased and open to the changes in the fact that I started as an indie podcaster, right? I don't have any training for doing what I'm doing. So I've learned everything on the fly by getting my hands dirty, by not pressing record, like I said before, like trying to figure out how close to the mic to be, how figuring out all this stuff, how my levels have constantly been horrible, right? How some of my shows needed to be edited and I didn't do it. And then learning how to edit, like all of those things. I've come from an indie side of things. I ended up working in the industry. And then now I'm like sort of like at the helm of this incredibly huge, I feel powerful and organization, which is She Podcasts. And I get an opportunity to speak with some of the people who have been doing this for a long time. And this has been their business, like broadcast people in public media, people who are doing this and have been doing this for public radio and corporations and things like that. Even just commercial radio. So I get an opportunity to speak with all of these like big CEOs and kind of like be on panels with some of these people, which is like, why am I here? Right. I still have that sense of like, why do you have me on this panel? I feel a little overwhelmed. But at the same time, when I'm sitting there, I'm like, I totally know what I'm talking about. Like, I know this stuff. Oh my God, I totally know this. And I have something to offer. Oh my God, I'm just like you. Wow, we're comrades, like we're like in the same level. So there's this wonderful demystification, if you will, about being in one space and being in another and thinking like that's them, this is us. And to know that we all have our power. We all have our know how. We all have done things the way that we've done our things. And the beauty of podcasting is that knowledge is, it can be maybe I know more about X part of the business. You might know more about Y part of the business, but that doesn't take away from what we're doing. And I have one last thing to add to this. And this was really brought to the table by Julika Lantigua Williams, who is another producer that is doing some phenomenal work out in the space right now. And what she did, and she actually changed my mind and my stance about a lot of different things, because I've always self-identified as podcaster first. And I've always been like, I'm a podcaster and you should podcast in order to know podcasting. And I've been really into like, how can somebody have a podcast and not listen to shows? Or how can somebody have a podcast and never done their own show? Like I was very much like, right? Super like that. And then she said that you can be in podcasting and you don't have to be a podcaster. And I started to think about that. And I thought about it from the perspective of how passionate we are for podcasting itself, for the medium itself. There's some of us who love podcasting so much, but they don't want to podcast. They just love it. They love podcasting. They might just be audio editors. They might be somebody who's helping you doing your social media. They might be somebody who's going to be an incredible copywriter for us. There might be somebody who's going to be doing podcast, like, web designed only for podcasters, but they don't want anything to do with being behind the mic. And they're just as important for our industry. And I feel that anybody who wants to be in podcasting and can recognize the power of podcasting doesn't necessarily need to be a podcaster. And I think what I've seen is that I'm opening myself. And in doing that, I see like, oh gosh, we could grow so much more if we allow like that, not to think like, oh, that person doesn't podcast. They don't know how amazing it is.
Yeah, everybody's role in podcasting now is so unique and so different. Like to an audio engineer, it's just another audio file. It's just
Right.
another story. But they can be just as passionate about what they do and not have done all their show notes and do all the the audio uploads and everything else. And you're exactly right. We all play our own individual role within the space. We all have our own unique way of applying what we know and what we love. And it may be different from how Steve and I started. It's very different from Elsie, how you and Jess started, but it's a role. And we're all here to kind of push this medium up a little bit further. And that's what I can appreciate with as many voices and as many talents and skill sets that are out there. It's all about just pushing it a little bit forward and a little bit more progressive month by month, year after year.
Absolutely. Yep.
In the remaining time we have, we're eventually going to go through our schedule real quick and what's coming up. But I got something I want to bring to everybody's attention that I think is of utmost importance. And that is, as we all know, podcasting is about sound. It's about hearing. And what about those that don't have those abilities? Imagine if the podcasting community could help give hearing and a voice to the deaf and hard of hearing. I'm very pleased to bring to you the first ever podcast world tour, traveling around the globe and interviewing and sharing and inspiring stories of podcasters, industry experts, service providers, local heroes, icons, and nonprofits. Along the way, they are sharing a mission to help kids born deaf to hear and speak for life without the use of sign language or lip reading. This is the podcast world tour. Folks, podcasting can change the world. And I'm going to show you that some now. Might want to have your hand on the volume. I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I just can't wait to show this to you.
All right, Rich Casanova.
It's Nick Rodriguez.
And we're launching the Podcast World Tour. And as podcasters, this is our mission for the tour, is imagine impacting kids that are deaf at birth.
At the Auditory Verbal Center, they work with children who can't hear or were born with severe hearing loss.
And it's just amazing the work that they do, helping kids that are, in many cases, born completely deaf. And through their technology, from the implants to the therapy, it's just, it's short of a miracle.
Children who are born deaf can be identified with having hearing loss the day they are born. They can get diagnostic testing at such a young age, can be fit with hearing aids within a couple weeks.
Within weeks to months after the implantation, to see the joy that comes to their face when they are hearing sounds that they haven't heard for the first time.
It's amazing the work they're doing here locally, but the technology of teletherapy, then watching the interaction with the parent and the kid and the therapist as if they're in the same room, but they could be anywhere across the country or across the world.
Is just so warming, and everyone in the room just lights up to see a child who wasn't responding to sound giggle at the sound of a squeaky toy for the first time.
And I really want to just thank the Podcast World Tour for coming to our center and talking to us, because our biggest mission is to get the word out.
So we asked everybody to spread the word that through the auditory verbal approach and high powerful hearing aids or cochlear implant, you can learn to hear and speak.
If that doesn't affect you, nothing will.
Yeah, that's
It's what's needed in our world. And I want to thank this organization for bringing this to our attention. And we are also going to award the third International Podcast Day Gratitude Award to this organization for the work that they are doing. God bless you.
It's amazing stuff. It's powerful.
Absolute incredible story. I'm so glad that Steve, Podcast World Tour, had reached out to us. And interesting part is I started following them on social media recently without just understanding, okay, they're World Tour. I didn't really have a chance to really dive in and reach out to them. And then you messaged me like an hour later, and it's like, hey, check out this amazing story and this amazing video. And we're like, we need to highlight this and share it with the world. Yeah. And it's unlike anything that's being done out there right now. And for that reason, like you said, Steve, the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award, we're bringing it back. We are giving it to Podcast World Tour. Just an incredible story of what they're doing within the space. Just couldn't be any more happier to give it to them in recognition of everything they're doing.
It's amazing stuff.
I couldn't even talk without choking up. It's just of such importance in our world. So back to our big party, and we're talking about International Podcast Day. And Dave, can you just give us a rundown? We're getting close on time here, but what's coming up in the next 30 some hours?
Everybody out there in podcast land, we have a ton in store. We have, after this, another 30 plus hours of live podcasting from around the world. And it's interesting, Steve. Every year is different. We don't know how our schedule is going to come out. We don't know who's going to accept our invitation. We're never even sure who we're going to connect with randomly in the space to really see what's out there and what's going on. But I guarantee you, every year we get some unique countries represented. We have some unique topics coming as well. And just for the record, like I said, we have 50 plus podcasters on this year's event, 25 female and 25 male voices. We have 22 countries represented. That includes the likes of Australia, Sweden, Singapore, Kenya, Canada. For the first year ever, we're going to have somebody from Nepal represented on ours. We have Nigeria, France, Finland, Philippines. Where else can we go? Australia, India, New Zealand, the United Kingdom. We're going to have Switzerland back after a 3-year absence. We're even going to shoot our way over to South Africa, Portugal, Jamaica's involved this year. Brazil, for the very first time, is going to have their first session. And of course, it's going to be in Portuguese, which is going to be absolutely incredible. And I know I'm missing Puerto Rico, Paraguay. There's probably a few other countries, Steve and Elsie, that I've been forgetting along the way. But you can find everything over at internationalpodcastday.com/schedule to see the entire lineup. And we have their bios and their session descriptions and what they're going to talk about. And it's everything from, cultural things that are going on in different areas that podcasts are helping with to, some of the fundamentals behind podcasting, and just a wide range of things, different things from, building podcasts as amplifiers of marginalized voices to, what's the difference in France versus India versus Nigeria versus the UK? What is happening in the world? And I think it's important. And that's one of the key elements behind our event, is just to highlight what's going on and to see all the beautiful faces of all our great speakers. Head over to internationalpodcastday.com/speakers. You can check out, of course, we have all their links, follow them on social media. We have information on all of them. And it's really cool just to get a real quick snippet on who they are as individuals, what podcasts they're creating, and even if they're not creating podcasts, what are they doing in the space as an audio enthusiast or some sort of player in the space. So everybody can go over to those websites, check it out. It's going to be an incredible year again. Just super excited. And Steve, as a matter of fact, 22 countries is the most we've ever had represented in one single International Podcast Day. And for that, I'm very thankful for every podcaster that accepted our invitation, and those that I found along the way that their stories are so incredible that I want them to be told on this platform. So pretty incredible stuff planned for the next 30 hours.
And thank you for putting that on, Dave. So with the remaining minutes that I do have, I want to get to a couple promotions and giveaways that are going on for International Podcast Day. And in the next session, we're going to have Hanny Mora with Repurpose.io. And with his product, you can get 20% off for life. And I'm sure he's going to be talking about that in our next session. Second Line Themes, which are actual WordPress themes for podcasting, 20% off through October 1st using the promo code International Podcast Day. You can win a Scarlett I2I from Focusrite. Just go to internationalpodcastday.com/Focusrite and enter to win. The Messengers, the podcasting documentary created by Chris Kermodos and some of the other members of the Florida podcasting community, are going to give away their movie for free. Head over to internationalpodcastday.com/messengers, and also 10% off Indie PodCon 2020. Use the promo code INTL until 1 p.m. the 30th, and you can save lots of money. Elsie, I appreciate you so much. Congratulations to you and Jess once again to what's going on with your community. We're proud of you. We're happy to support you. Mm-hmm. And the only thing we ask is you tell us some of the gossip when the thing's over. How's that?
I know, right? What stays in Atlanta? What is it? What happens in Atlanta stays in Atlanta.
Yep. There'll be a lot of that. That's fine.
There really will. So, I want to summarize by saying this. I am proud to be a participant of the podcast community. It has given me more than I could ever give it. And it's through built friendships in podcasting. It's through knowledge. It's through advancements. It's like we saw in that video, a willingness to reach out and say, I'm here. I have something to say. You may or may not agree, but so let's have a discussion. And I wish we had more of that in today's world. Discussion. Not pointing fingers or not criticizing, but let's work together and have a future that is full of conversation. And to me, that is International Podcast Day. Final words, Dave?
I just can't thank the community enough for coming together and making International Podcast Day what it is today. Kind of like you, Elsie, with She Podcast. If nobody comes, it doesn't grow. And people have showed interest, and there's been podcasters internationally that have reached out to us and journalists to say, we love what you're doing. We want to help you promote and grow. And I just can't thank everybody enough from the bottom of my heart to really making this event and this celebration really what it is. So let's get out there over the next, our thing is really over like a 48-hour period, but we know it's 365 days of celebrating podcasts. We've selected this day, and we do celebrate and we push it, and it's a great time. But don't forget that day in and day out, hour after hours, you're listening to those podcasts, to make sure you reach out and share your comments with your friends, with the podcast hosts and everything. So thank you for everybody that makes the day as popular and fun and as exciting as it is right now.
Final words, Elsie?
Just thank you. Thank you for the platform. Thank you guys for putting this stuff together and giving a lot of us indie podcasters a voice, a place for us to come together. And I think the other thing that I really hats off to you guys for really being open to the rest of the world, because that's something that I feel I'd love to champion more. Libsyn's really getting behind this as well, to be able to really reach out to the global community, the global podcasting community, people that are outside of the United States who are doing this work as well. For me right now, doing anything with the Spanish speaking countries out there, to be able to get us together as well. We all have our own little places, but if we can be exposed to each other's work, it's just going to grow who we are as podcasters. So thank you for the international part of International Podcast Day. And I hope that more people from many other different places in the world continue to participate, and you can keep growing the numbers of countries that participate in the show. So we should do a shout out at some point to people who haven't, like the countries that you don't have. I want to have these countries in next year. Have a list.
So well put. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up the opening of International Podcast Day. I'm looking so much forward to the rest of the event and what people have to say. But coming up next is Hanny Mora, one of our gold sponsors. It's going to be fabulous. So hang around. By the way, because Google changed their API, if you don't see the next session starting, please click play, and you should be fine. So until then, and until now, thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
See ya.